This is Money Made Simple, the financial podcast that keeps it simple and gets to the point. Kia ora and welcome to Money Made Simple, brought to you by Simplicity. Kia ora, Liv.
Hi, Jennie.
It's still 2025. How's it going?
2025 is interesting. It feels like it's been a long month already, but it's only been, I've been back a week and a half. You've been back.
Yeah, but settling in,
days.
Back into the routine.
Yeah, hope all of our listeners have been settling back into work, into life, all of that. New year, new us, all of it. Hopefully you listened to our last podcast around setting up your goals.
Yeah, starting to think about money and what that's going to look like for you this year. Yes. And one of the things we've been chatting about is side hustles. So how you can supplement your main income. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, so we'll talk about what it kind of really means, why they've exploded in popularity here in New Zealand, and how lots of Kiwis have been kind of using them to navigate the current cost of living, which obviously is still pretty tough out there.
So we'll look at the pros and cons and also cover a few ideas.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of research around it, and maybe we'll share some stuff from our own experiences.
We will. Cool. So first, let's get the definition out of the way. So basically, according to my ChatGPT, side hustles can be defined as work performed for income supplementary to one's primary or day job. Cool. So why are these extra jobs or side hustles such a big deal in New Zealand at the moment?
Yeah, well, they've been around for a while. They're not new. So apparently the word appeared in the 50s, but they've really become something since the early 2000s, and that's because of the internet and people's ability to connect and find work in less traditional ways. So it means that people are looking for short-term work on their own terms, so whether it's a few hours, few days work, and generally it happens on a digital platform, and we're going to talk about some of those platforms.
Cool. So they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
There's been a bit of an increase in the last, decade or so?
Yeah, in New Zealand, but I'm sure it's global as well. But there was a survey last year that found that 33,000 more New Zealanders had a second or multiple jobs than the 5 years previous. And actually looking at the even more recent research from the end of last year, 50% of working Kiwis would consider a second job.
So aren't necessarily, but are thinking about whether they need to or want to, which isn't a surprise, right? Given what I just mentioned, the cost of living increases, so the cost of rent, groceries, bills, like power prices are surging. It kind of makes sense, and wage growth, I don't think, has kept pace with the costs. So it makes sense that side hustles are becoming more and more of a thing.
Yeah, so I think the main reason is definitely that it helps you meet your financial needs, and as they've got harder for people, that more and more people are looking at supplementing their income. But there are other reasons that people have a side hustle, eh?
Yeah, so I mean there's quite a few. So one of them could just be not actually a need, but having more discretionary income that you would like. So if you're planning on a holiday, or you want to buy an amazing new car or something like that, and you kind of just want to bump up your income for a short period of time.
Yeah, like it doesn't fit your budget. You need some extra income to get the more fun stuff.
Yeah, you're not struggling with the cost of bills, but you want extra.
Yeah.
Skill building. So if your job doesn't necessarily use the skills that you want to develop, you could then develop those skills through a side gig.
If you're not able to access training and development in your job, then you might have to go out and find these opportunities yourself,
learn by
right?
doing,
yeah.
right? It's one of the best ways of learning. Also, if you want a potentially new career in the future, but you kind of need a way to
get a bit of experience or something.
Baby steps into it. You could start something that could then become a main gig later on.
If you've got a business idea, but you're not quite ready to make the plunge, leave your main job to pursue it, you could set it up as a little side hustle, see if it grows, and then work into it that way.
Yeah. And finally, something that I definitely do in my own side hustle life is following your passion. So maybe you're a good musician. For me, it was around yoga. Yeah, it could just be something that you're not necessarily too worried about it making money, but it can make money on the side by pursuing that.
Yeah, like maybe like you're an artist and you want to sell a few of your paintings or some kind of crafty thing. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So we know what it is and why
people do it.
Generally most people would be doing it. Let's talk about a few good side hustle ideas. So there's lots of information out there, but where's a good place for people to start?
I think a really good place to start is looking at what you're good at. So like you talked about it with passion projects, if you're particularly creative or if you're really good at doing admin or If you have a good business idea like you spoke about and you want to test it out.
So start with what you've got,
yeah,
really. And then
what you've got to offer.
Yeah.
As you said, there are loads of resources out there from a bunch of specifically Kiwi providers that can give you ideas.
Yeah.
We did actually come up with a list ourselves.
We did, yes. And the first one is something that you have, but it's not a skill. And it's on all the lists, and it's renting out a bedroom either on a long-term basis or by Airbnb or sort of the short-term stuff, or renting out a garage or a parking space. So this is stuff that you've got and could be making you money. A room in somewhere like Auckland can actually be rented for, a couple of $100.
Yeah, a $250 because we actually do it. So we've owned a house for almost 7 years now, and I'd say 90% of that time we've had a flatmate or boarder, whatever you want to call them. So we actually do this. I didn't actually, before coming into this podcast, think of it as a side hustle, but according to our definition, it definitely is, because it's extra income on top of your normal job. So we do that. It's probably a little bit less convenient for your everyday life, but a lot less admin than doing it via an Airbnb.
Yeah, where you're going to be changing lots of sheets and cleaning and that kind of thing. But if you've got a long-term tenant, it's a little bit lower effort.
Yeah, exactly.
And even lower effort would be if you have a car park that comes with your house and you don't have a car.
You would have to be city or city fringe. It really is your situation dependent. Whether you have a spare room or garage or park. But
yeah, and the garage thing, I mean, I can't imagine a garage that isn't rammed with stuff like ours is.
Kiwi stuff.
But there might be some people that have empty garages, and again, you could lease that. So that's a fairly easy
passive option, right?
Yeah. And could be quite sustainable.
Number 2 is, I think, where a lot of side hustles and side gigs came from originally, which is neighbourhood services like babysitting or dog walking, which don't take a lot of skill but take your time up, or even gardening, those kind of things that you can do within your community.
I mean, the more skilled you are with those things, I think probably the better, but you agreed it's quite a low entry point and really flexible, because you can just pick up work if and when you want it. It's local, so there aren't those costs of getting around, and from a really young age, that's the kind of stuff that you can start doing from sort of 14 onwards. And dog walking particularly, New Zealanders love dogs. I think we have like the highest per capita rate of dog ownership in the world or something.
Should be cats, but that's okay.
I don't know. I'll check that and put that in the show notes if that's just a complete lie. Another popular one is selling things on Trade Me or Facebook Marketplace, or if there's a local kind of exchange of some kind. And there's 2 ways to do that. There would be like just selling the things that you own that you don't need anymore. So
we never needed in the first place.
Decluttering my garage, for example. And that might be a bit ad hoc, like you just do it as you find things. Or you could do it in a more intentional way and go out and look at antique shops and op shops, and then look to sell things online.
So buy things in order to sell them for a higher price. That's how you make the money.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, but there are some tax considerations if you are selling a lot of things. If you're just selling your old, I don't know, PlayStation or a dress that you wore to a wedding once or something, that's fine. But if you're selling regularly, then there are some tax obligations. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Another one that's become really popular is doing ride-sharing services or delivery driving. So the likes of Uber, DoorDash, Ola, I think, is one of them. So this is really good if you have some time, especially
in a car.
And a car, of course, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Some people do it on bikes, though.
Okay, a car or a bike.
You can earn $25 to $35 an hour, apparently, doing this kind of stuff.
But you've got to think about some of the costs of that, right? The running of your car, petrol costs, that all comes out of that rate.
And the Ubers and the Olas and all that don't cover that stuff, so that's your extra costs. So,
but again, that's one that's really flexible. You can say, I've got a few hours today, or you can just do it whenever you can, rather than committing to anything.
Yeah, cool. This is one that I'm kind of iffy about because I've given it a go as like kind of personal research, and that's signing up for online surveys.
It's market research, right? So it's companies that want to know what people think about certain brands or services, and they will go out with a list of questions and they will pay people a small amount of money to complete those surveys.
Yes, so I've done this, and I think it's probably worth about $1 or $2 per survey, and it takes you 15-20 minutes. So it's an interesting one. And yes, it can earn you probably, depending on how much time you have on your hands and how many surveys you qualify for, it can probably earn you up to $100 to $200 a month.
Right.
So it's not a lot, but hey, if it's just for a little bit of extra, say you've got a coffee habit or something, then it could, and you have a lot of time.
Yeah, you're sitting on the couch and you just do it when you're at home in the evenings, maybe you could make it work.
Cool. What else?
The last one, I think, on our list is listing your services on a digital platform like Fiverr, or you had a bunch of others too that I can't remember now.
Upwork, there is
Guru, Freelancer, those guys. So you have some skills in design or video editing or writing, that kind of thing, then you can find work, and they're usually short-term projects. You can pick it up and get that done just whenever you have the time to do it. So that is the gig economy in practice.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
So a lot of these platforms are global, and so you just, I guess, a bit of a caveat that you are competing against global candidates who may charge a lot less than what you would naturally think that you can charge for your services. So they
because
might be
the cost of living in there where they live is different.
Exactly. So they might be charging $20 an hour, and you might be think that that's not worth your time. In terms of these platforms, also take a percentage of your income. I think Fiverr is like a whopping 20%.
20%, which is like a tax on top of a tax.
And
really.
then you'd also have to pay tax, which we'll go into in a sec. There are a couple of New Zealand local platforms like Unicorn Factory and the Creative Store, so you can look at that would take out that global competition and pricing a little bit.
And of course, if you're a freelancer, you don't have to use these digital platforms either. You could use LinkedIn, you may have your own network, but it's a really good place to start.
If you don't have the time or skills to build your own website and sell via your own means, then
Okay, so that's a few ideas. There are loads of other lists out there with really cool ideas, so go out and seek them if you're interested. But it's really important to think about the pros and cons of a side hustle because, there are some things to think about, and sure, having a bit of supplementary income might be useful, but are there, some disadvantages?
Absolutely. So we'll go through the pros first, and they're kind of related to why people actually do a side hustle. So the obvious one is extra income.
Money.
Yes, if you need it or want it, depending on what your situation is. Yep. Also, if it's more of a passion project, can create that creative outlet for you. If your job, your main job isn't really what you're passionate about, then you can use your side hustle as that.
Yeah, and if it's something that you enjoy doing anyway and you can get paid for it, then
exactly.
Bonus.
Exactly. Yeah. Also developing new skills, as we said earlier, if you do want to pursue a new career in the future or a business, then you can develop those skills by doing first.
So the pros are really financial or personal development.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are cons, right?
There are cons, and the biggest is probably tax, paying tax. And I don't mean that tax is bad in itself, but understanding what your obligations are and managing that.
Platforms based off the side hustle economy and contracting and freelancing and all that have come up to make it easier, like Henry. It is more expensive than probably doing it yourself. If you don't use one of those automated platforms, you do have to deal with your tax either through an accountant or manually doing a tax return yourself.
Some side hustles, you'd actually be employed. Like if you've got a job, I don't know, maybe you do a bit of waitressing in the evenings or something like that, then the tax would all be dealt with. If you aren't paying tax, you need to find out if you're going to need to pay it, and then you need to set it aside. So it's like, it's a bit of a manual thing.
Yeah, so worth understanding the requirements.
Yeah, and there's a good website which we'll leave in the show notes. It's a government one which talks about those tax obligations and how to manage that.
There's resources out there.
There is.
Overcommitting and burnout is one that I'm definitely familiar with. So, if you have a full-time job and then you're taking on more time, no matter how little or big that is, there is the risk of taking on too much, overcommitting.
And that I guess it could start to impact your primary job.
Yes.
True. If you're really tired, exhausted, burning the candle at both ends,
yes.
that kind of thing.
And that's something to consider in terms of for your employer. Are they happy for you to take on a second job, and will it impact your primary job, and is that fair to what you're doing? So something to consider.
And some jobs would be more flexible in that way and others wouldn't. So everyone's situation is going to be a bit different.
Yeah. Scams, big thing always, as is life at the moment. Scams are everywhere. So.
Yeah, if you see an ad on social somewhere that says you could make thousands of dollars more a month by doing this, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
So make sure you do your research. Again, our Money Hub mates have got a good sort of blog on that topic, things to watch out for.
Proceed with caution.
Yes, for sure.
What about, so we've kind of gone through the pros and cons in terms of our own experiences. Should we
go on. We love to ditch the dirt on our own lives. I definitely don't have a side hustle at the moment. That's my kids.
You are
they
a
keep me busy. I am kind of an Uber driver and a chef and all those other things.
You just don't know.
I just don't get paid for it.
Our definition was earning extra income.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you are not a side hustler?
But I have been in the past, particularly in my student days where I had multiple jobs, a lot of them kind of the neighbourhood sort of stuff like babysitting and gardening and things. But yeah, I was a real hustler pre the gig economy because everyone knows how old I am now.
You made side gigs cool before they were cool.
I totally did. You have a side hustle at the moment?
Yeah, so I didn't used to be much. I did babysitting when I was younger, but I'm not, that was kind of primary income while I was at school, so it wasn't a side hustle. I teach yoga, and we also have a boarder, as I talked about. We've always had a renter at our house. Interestingly, though, I did experience burnout towards the end of last year, had a lot going on, and I've actually recently just given up one of my yoga classes, unfortunately, which was hard, but again, it was too much with full-time job and taking up a lot of my personal time as well.
And I think that probably leads us, because the last thing we kind of wanted to cover was some tips for success.
Yes.
So if you are going to take on a secondary job or a side hustle, how can you make it work for you? And the number one tip for success that you had was...
make sure that it works in with your current...
That it's sustainable.
Yeah, current and future lifestyle.
Yeah.
So make sure that it's not going to overwhelm you or lead to burnout or create issues with your primary job. Like really carefully consider how much time it's going to take, and
because there really are only so many hours in a day. You can't do everything,
and you need downtime as well. Like, yes, there are lots of hours. Like, I mean, you see a whole lot of podcasts saying there are this many hours that we don't use, but I think humans actually need downtime.
They really do.
And so incorporate that. And related to this is setting boundaries. So make sure that you don't end up overcommitting and saying yes as a people pleaser or someone that just really wants to, show how much you can get done. Make sure that you have those boundaries. Again, for me with yoga classes, I didn't set them right, and it ended up actually worse because I had to, after a year of doing one of my classes, I had to then leave it, in which, so it wasn't a long-term thing, sustainable.
That's the kind of difference between doing those sort of set jobs on set days as your side hustle versus picking up work when the ride share or Uber driving, that kind of thing, or Fiverr, you just like, actually, I've got a spare few days, let's see if I can get a bit of extra. Then you're doing it in a sort of sustainable way.
There are a big range of different types and structures of side hustles.
It's going to suit different people.
So make sure that you review what will work for you and what won't. Yeah. What about you? What are your top tips?
My top tip is probably be prepared to hustle. It's called that for a reason. And that if you want to make it work, and especially if you're using it to develop new skills or as a stepping stone towards a new career, you might have to put yourself out there, use your networks, knock on doors, maybe literally if you're starting a dog walking service, or maybe figuratively, but just be prepared to market yourself and what you have to offer.
Which is a hard thing for a lot of people, right?
I wouldn't like it at all. It's my top tip, but I would struggle to do it.
Yeah, so if you are wanting to get into a side hustle, know that you might be prepared. You have to be prepared to do all that.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. There is a bunch of information out there, obviously, on side hustles. When we were doing research for this podcast, we came across loads, right?
Yeah, and especially because of those recent surveys where they've found New Zealanders are picking up second jobs and more. At the moment, there are lots of articles about what people are doing, what's working, what's not working, and kind of ideas. So do your own research.
Yeah, we'll put a few of them in the show notes. So obviously there's our favourites, Money Hub. They have a whole lot of information on side hustles and ideas.
CanStar have one as well. They've got a list of 25 ideas that are all relevant to New Zealand. Yep.
Cool. And then, as you said, business.gov, they have some information around tax. So head to the show notes if you want more information.
Yeah, we'll have some links there. Yeah.
Cool. In a nutshell, side hustles can be fun. They can kind of help you out financially, and they can help you personally grow as a side benefit there. But they're not obviously without their challenges.
Yeah, there are some challenges, and so I think we'd want our listeners to hustle smart and not hustle hard.
Yes. Yep. Awesome. Oh, that's a great place to leave it. So thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.
See you later.
Ka kite.
Bye.
This podcast contains personal opinions and is intended to provide educational information only. It doesn't relate to your particular financial situation or goals and is not financial advice or recommendations. Simplicity New Zealand Limited is the issuer of the Simplicity KiwiSaver scheme and investment funds. For product disclosure statements, please visit Simplicity's website, simplicity.kiwi.